Welcome to the Human Longevity Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Petersen, and this is a special edition today as we explore the science and solutions that truly can help you live better, longer. And today we are going to really break down a recent podcast that Andrew Huberman did on peptides. And we're going to call him out on a few things, and we are going to have some critical thinking. And I am joined by my special guest, a industry expert, and I'm proud to call her my best friend, Dr. Stephanie Rimka. Welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Melissa. I'm super excited to be here and everybody in your audience at the Human Longevity Institute. I'm super excited to do this, you guys. You can say you're welcome to me if you don't know me, because I asked Dr. Melissa to do a lot of special things, and I said, girl, we have to do the Huberman. Now, in her genius, as always, we're not going to break down the entire hour and a half podcast. She's made a really smart decision, and we're going to pick one specific topic, BPC-157. So I'm super excited for us to get into this.
So today's conversation is so important because, unfortunately, what Andrew Huberman did in his podcast, he did provide some great information, but he also provided some very misleading information that could create a shadow of doubt around this very important conversation around peptides. So first of all, what is a peptide? Well, it can seem really complex, but it's not. It's something that's naturally occurring in the body. It is made from amino acids. Now, amino acids are simply just proteins that are broken down, and these are the building blocks for everything in your life. Peptides are short chains of amino acids, and you can think of them like a lock and a key. So they are a very specific key that goes into a lock that signals and elicits very specific supportive functions in the body, and they can be utilized in many ways, from healing and repair to sexual health, to gut health, to cognitive health, to longevity, age reversal. There's so many uses for these incredible naturally occurring amino acid peptides. But we're going to look at BPC-157 specifically. We're going to break down what Huberman said. We are going to bring in an industry expert, Dr. Kent Holtorf. He's a board certified physician that literally trains physicians around the globe on these peptides. He uses them in his own practice. They literally saved his life when traditional medicine could not. He's published peer-reviewed articles and best-selling books. He's the founder of the National Thyroid Association. He was even the endocrinologist for AOL. And
we both have been trained by Dr. Kent in peptide therapy use, one of many people we've studied under in the world. So that's a true industry world expert in peptide therapy. Andrew Huberman is not. And it is disheartening to me to see someone who knows very little on a subject matter reach epic status. Like that peptide podcast that he did was anticipated by many. He has one of the most listened to podcasts in the world. I know he's in the top 5. I don't know his current ranking. So he's very popular, therefore very influential. So it is incredibly important when people have that much power, that much influence, that what they're saying is as accurate as possible. And to piggyback on what Dr. Melissa said, for me, the overall arching message in that podcast was there was a lot of truth. Yes, there was some real stuff there, absolutely. But sprinkled within that were the seeds of to germinate seeds of doubt within you. It was like sprinkling a garden with a bunch of weeds at the same time. And I think to use your platform to basically let people well, here's a good thing, but be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. And it's good, but be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. Just putting that level of doubt into people creates hesitation, and you can, via, which we will get into later, placebo versus nocebo effect, make something very powerful. You put a negative signal at the same time, and now suddenly something that would have worked, you've made not work. The power of the mind, the power of thought, suggestive, thinking is very potent. So we're trying to show you somebody who is an expert, Dr. Ken Holtorf, way better than us on peptide therapy, hands down. And then we're going to break what he says down. We're going to break a little bit more down about what Huberman says. To my goal for every single patient, every single consumer, anybody who takes any courses with me, does anything with me, is to empower you to your own health sovereignty. I do not want you to be a slave to anyone or any system, right? So the more you know, the better you can become a partner with whoever you're working, whatever doctor or coach you're working with, right? So that's what we're looking for to help you discern that here, because it's not fair for the average consumer to have any idea what Huberman is really saying and how he's cherry picking and being very selective what to lead you down a path of thought. So let's go ahead and start breaking some of it down.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead first. We're going to show the clip from Huberman. Then we're going to show a clip. I was having a conversation just the other night about this with Dr. Kent Holtorf. So we're going to hear what he has to say. And then you're going to hear back from Dr. Rimka and I. And we're going to really bring this to a place because, again, it's about empowering you, informing you, and giving you more to the story that seemingly was intentionally or misleadingly left out to potentially cause sprinkle those seeds of doubt. So let's go ahead and hear what Huberman had to say.
Not often discussed, which is that if you have a tumor, and tumors thrive on increased blood flow because they like to consume growth factors, and increased blood flow means increased growth factors and other things that can not just sustain but actually grow the tumor. Well, then by taking BPC-157, you may be either maintaining or accelerating the growth of a tumor that would otherwise be removed or stay small. In other words, BPC-157 is a potential tumor growth risk. So if you have knowledge of a given cancer or you're concerned about tumors at all, I would encourage you to be very cautious about the use of BPC-157.
Here we go.
It's like that is needed to heal. And we don't have enough vascular genesis. That's why diabetics, they can't heal, they can't get enough blood flow. And okay, if that's a problem, okay, then take vitamin D off the shelf, take vitamin C, take flavonoids, it's absurd, right? And there's also angiogenesis versus vascular genesis, and it only makes new vessels in damaged tissue. And you can't heal without that. So, it's one of those things just grasping, it's right. And he knows he's wrong. And he's grasping on that. So
so I think the things that become really important, bring some greater clarity on, is Huberman saying, hey, BPC can accelerate tumor growth by way of this VEGF pathway because of this angiogenesis process. Then you just heard Dr. Kent Holtorf say, okay, wait a minute. There are nuances here, right? Like this only signals there's only going to be new growth in injured tissue. So cancerous tissue is not putting off the same type of signal as a Achilles tear, an ACL tear, like you've had an injury, a sprain, a strain. When this is signaled, it's not signaled in the same way that they're trying to make a correlation that the same way tumor activity occurs utilizing the process of angiogenesis because of that pathway is the same thing that is activated in that pathway with BPC, and it's completely not accurate. That's the point that Dr. Kent was just making. It's absolutely not accurate. There's more nuances to this. And Dr. Rimka, I think it's really important for us, like right here, I want to help everybody to realize, again, peptides. And
let's break it down for them. Let's be really simple, you guys.
Yes,
okay,
please.
like we didn't say this yet. What is BPC-157, right? So what does BPC stand for? Body protection compound. These scientists didn't get real creative. They found something in the body that's made inside your stomach. I make it, you make it, we make it. This is a natural substance we make, like insulin and growth hormone and dopamine and serotonin and melatonin. It's not here to hurt you.
Yes.
Your divine intelligence made this inside your stomach. And because it did so many things, what a bunch of PhDs and MDs in a lab with their white coats on, when they figured out what this was, wow, sure likes you know what it does? It protects the whole body from all kinds of things. It repairs and regenerates. You know what we should call it? Body protection compound, huh? Not stomach protection compound, not gastrointestinal tract protection compound, body protection compound.
Yes.
Because it goes and protects the whole body.
Yes.
Correct. You make it. Like
Yes.
dopamine, serotonin, melatonin, oxytocin, right? It's a good thing. Your body's not making something to hurt you, okay? In the right amount. Now, sometimes things happen, stress, eat things, injury, aging not well, and you're not making as much body protection compound in your stomach as you used to or should be. Does this happen sometimes, Dr. Melissa? Do we not make enough of things or too much of things sometimes based upon diet, lifestyle, sleep, no, not sleep, stress? Great. So why don't you tell them what BPC-157, because that isn't actually the same as BPC. Why don't you take that part a little bit?
So really, okay, so let's break this down. When we're looking at creating these molecules that you can go ahead and get online, there's a variety of places through compounding pharmacies, through your physician, through integrative peptides like Dr. Kent has. When you're looking at these, BPC-157 is a segment of BPC. Okay, so BPC, it's made naturally in the gastric juices of the stomach. And again, body protective compound, so it's going to be able to carry out multiple actions. The 157 is a very specific strand of it. And so the way I like to think of these molecules are like locks and like a key to a lock. So it's going to carry out a very specific component of that larger amino acid strand. And in relation to this specifically, again, it is carrying out the activation of this signaling, this modulation response that when there's injury, it's going to elicit a signal to help promote several different mechanisms of action to bring healing to an area. And again, and he did speak to this a bit. Go ahead. You want to say something?
Well, I mean, I want you guys to know, what is a signal molecule? What is she saying? And I'm holding out my hand to like as if it's a telephone, old school, the way we used to do it back in the 1975 time when it was lovely, right? When you picked up the phone and had to press numbers and dial a rotary. So it's kind of like, so there's a problem. I hit my head. And the body's like, ring, ring. Hey, we have a problem. And it calls a signal, and a whole bunch of things happen. So it calls the 911, and it's like that call center in the body goes out to police, fire, ambulance, cleanup crew, the janitors, the road construction. It's a whole bunch of things that are going on. It's not like a line to one thing only. You know, BPC is doing a whole, it's like, oh, okay, what just happened over here? And the body is so complex, and a signal molecule comes in, is like, I have to recruit a whole lot of things to happen all at the same time. It doesn't just push something up and push something down, which is what a drug typically does, right? The hypo, high blood pressure, just push it down. We will use no intelligence. We're just going to keep pushing it down and push it down. We could care less if a person passes out because we can't modulate. Peptides
this is essential.
Yeah, they're modulating the system. They're pushing up if it needs to go up, it's giving intelligence to your own internal systems. Hence why we make peptides. Do you want to know what the greatest research laboratory compound pharmacy in the world is? It's called your brain, okay? Because you put a signal inside that brain, and a signal can be as simple as a thought.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. And in a thought or a smile, because body position creates a signal and creates a certain peptide. Crying makes a peptide, smiling makes a peptide, laughing makes a peptide, sex makes different peptides. That's okay. Do we understand this? So you can take molecules via capsule, in nasal spray, injection, IVs, that do this too. All right. So they're inputs to the system. And so that signal molecule, I want to make sure they know what that is for the lay person. And I swear a lot of doctors don't even know what a signal molecule is.
Well, I love that you said it this way, because again, this is not, let's be really clear. This isn't to diminish anybody's level of intelligence. Like, I think in science, especially you hear a word like peptide, it's positioned in such a way that we're like, what is that actually? That we almost think that it's more complicated, complex than it is. So we feel disempowered by it, like, oh, there's something I don't know. So I don't know how to just use some simple common sense to make some decisions because I don't really know enough about it. So this is just to say, wait, it's actually not It's not as difficult as we've been led to believe. This is actually some real simple stuff that's naturally occurring in the body. But the body is complex. And so here's the nuanced differences, Dr. Rimka, that you were just alluding to. And I really want our listeners to appreciate and understand for themselves. We have all been raised and brought up in a pharmaceutical driven culture. Pill for an ill. And what we do not understand and appreciate is that when we take a medication, a pharmaceutical drug, is overriding the innate intelligence of your body. Most pharmaceutical drugs are literally pushing an action, turning it on or blocking an action. So it's literally like yes or no. They're not signaling. They're not. So the way the body innately works is, again, it's in the state of what is referred to as homeostasis. So let's call this our neutral, our balance. Like this is our kind of like our ready weight state. And then an input comes in and the body says, okay, I've got to recognize that input. I got to go respond to that input and I got to handle it. And then I'm going to come back to ready state. I'm going to recover and I'm going to be waiting till the next thing. So every time that we need to go recognize and respond, recognize what do I need to respond? And that's what Dr. Rimka was just saying. Like, hey, a smile will evoke a certain peptide, a hug, sex, all these different, there's an input. I recognize it. Now, what do I need to go respond to it? And it's this innate intelligence that's in a millisecond, coordinating between the brain, the body, the hormones, the peptides, the signaling the DNA to make sure that what is needed is there in the moment. And so it's working with what is needed in the moment in the body. A drug isn't working with innate intelligence. It's overriding that intelligence. It's forcing a response. So he was making a comment and setting this up as if peptide is a drug, overriding the system and going to keep that VEGF pathway active, keep it going to potentially accelerate tumor growth. And that's not what occurs. It signals. And when it activates, brings in more of those nutrients so healing can occur, then it stops. So because the signal has now stopped. So it's controlled versus uncontrolled. BPC-157 signaling a controlled response versus in a tumor when that pathway, the research they've looked at with that pathway saying, hey, this is an uncontrolled response. And yes, if you were to take a medication that just keeps the gas pedal down and overrides the innate intelligence, you'd have to be fearful. But this is not a medication that does that. So it's working with, it's signaling with, it's supporting those natural, like, well, let's turn it off now. We don't need any more.
Why did Dr. Melissa pick? We're going to talk about BPC-157. This is the most used, most kind of universal, most recommended. This is the entry to peptide therapy for most people. BPC-157 should be understood by every single practicing healthcare provider out there. I don't care what field you're in. I don't care if you're a primary care physician. I don't care if you're an orthopedic surgeon. I don't care if you're an acupuncturist, a chiropractor. You should know what BPC-157 is. The fact that we didn't learn what that was in school is a mistake. So that one is so simple. It's capsule form. And so many peptides, you guys, almost all of them are via needle. So I know that can be why it's not so huge. Part of it is, oh, needles. Listen, they've gotten better and better. There's a lot of time and money that's gone into research of changing the delivery system so we can have oral and nasal sprays in many of these compounds. And BPC-157 is the one that gives people a whole lot of bang for their buck. So the return on investment is very high and it helps a wide number of people in every age range. I want to be clear. I've been clinically using this with small children and old ladies
And pets.
and my pet and other people's pets. I have many vets that have taken my course, and we're actually looking at how can we build a course for vets because they use peptide. Animals make these too. And so how can we get some of the most potent regeneration, healing, overall best return on investment and safest compounds out there. And BPC-157 is referred to as the Wolverine peptide for a reason, because everybody loves it because of how it regenerates the gut, the joints, the brain. Right? So it is that safe. So I want no shadow of doubt or fear in anyone's mind over what is most likely going to be your entryway into one of the most potent therapeutic fields, peptide therapy, where there are thousands of peptides used in clinical use for people. Again, many of these you're going to need a trained clinician to go with you for complex protocols. And that's the kind of stuff that is clinician training, the things that the Human Longevity Institute can offer. Like, you want to know what the mold protocol is? You want to know what the Lyme protocol is? You want to know what you don't, that's what we use these for. So the people who see like a Kent Holtorf and us that recover from things that they were told they couldn't recover from, this is how they've done it. Peptides are one of the powerful, I love how you talk about small levers, do big, whatever that
Swing
thing.
big doors. Yeah.
Yeah, swing a big door, right? So that's what peptide therapy can be. And again, we help you go through how to do it right, because you got to have the right molecule at the right time for the right thing. And you don't stay on these things forever. But BPC-157 is kind of one of those ones that people do like to stay on because it's body protection compound. I had my own son on it all through high school, flag football and basketball, because just understanding what, if he were to get a concussion, how he would recover differently. And that's very clear in the literature. I have my mother on it. Why? Because recovery from stroke or heart attack or any concussion are totally different if you're on BPC-157. I have it for prevention. To me, it's a longevity tool. I take it every day. I think what's perfect to show right now, because, Kent alluded, well, he was very clear. Like, again, what are some other things that activate this? Vitamin D, vitamin C, flavonoids, like lots of things do this. So you're looking at a very linear left brain, like healing the body is a straight pathway, which nothing is. When you try to simplify body systems, so like, well, it's a pathway and we just do blah, 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 blah. And I think Kent says something next that like, I'm like, yeah, please, let's show this. And then we can expand upon understanding, again, peptides are naturally occurring compounds, and we live in a world where, thank goodness, some really good researchers figured out what these molecules were, how to isolate them, how to make them so we can use them in a therapeutic way to enhance your own body's functions if you've been sick, injured, or under, some type of stress that's taken your body down into a poor working state temporarily.
No, so I mentioned a lecture down in Mexico, and it's supposed to be 45 minutes, and like an hour and a half into it, and someone goes, "What is a peptide?" And I kind of, and yeah, I mean, I did this exercise, and I showed that I can show that magnesium causes cancer, right? When you try to take a pathway, and show, okay, this can cause this can cause this. It is total BS science, and that is just effed up on his part.
Right. That's the truth of it, you guys. And sometimes, and this gets really tricky, reading research papers is not easy. And anybody trying to tell you it is lying to you. People will send, hey, can you do this? It's taken me 6 to 8 hours sometimes to get through some of the papers I've read. I mean, if you get into the ones from the biophysics guys with the deuterium and stuff, I'm like, I'm gonna have to tap out and hire a Georgia Tech student to help me understand. Can you break it down for me again? Okay, because I don't have 8 hours to try to go through some of this. Now some of it is kind of simple once you know some words, like, oh, that means in a Petri dish. That means in a computer simulation model, huh? Half the studies you guys think are real were done by a computer. Did you know that? But see, they present it to you on the CNN and the ABC and the FOX as if it was a real thing that happened in real life, not a computer simulation.
Yeah.
And that's a fact. It's a little term. Like we have these terms, in situ, in vivo, and I forget the computer one. It's like in something. It doesn't say in computer. It has a little fancy word. Now I've already forgotten it. So once somebody teaches you kind of how to do that, you're like, oh, you can kind of break down, okay, these were in rats, which again, whatever, these were in people, this was just a review of literature. Oh, this was all questionnaires. This was questionnaires, not the same. I mean,
Yeah.
and this was in a computer, like the
Right.
computer made up an example and we're just going to pretend that was real life. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but my patients have never acted like a computer has told me they were going to act ever,
Right.
ever. And that's just how it is. Okay. So please know that, like, what Kent did was beautifully show, yeah, I can bamboozle anybody if I take it that way. Right. So, I mean, and we all know that his point was magnesium does not cause cancer, but I could show you
Correct.
in a paper, I could prove it to you that it does.
Well, and the same thing, vitamin D activates the VEGF pathway. And so we could be try to make that same correlation. And that is not how these molecules work within the body. Again, so if we can impart anything to you all today, it's that when something seems to, oh, could it? Okay, listen, like our tap water can cause cancer. Eating a high processed food, having a high stress, not getting enough sleep. There are so many things that can promote tumor growth.
Let's talk about the most important one. I mean, well, there's a few, outside of a known carcinogen, right?
Yeah.
You're smoking cigarettes. I'm not surprised you're going to get cancer, pumpkin.
Mhm.
You're eating known carcinogenic food, artificial dyes that we know, neurotoxins that we know. There's all kinds of things, like we do this. I mean, you X-ray techs, radiologists, that these are risky jobs. That's why they have to wear little monitors. And if they stack up a certain amount of exposure, they're done working for the year, right? It's radiation causes cancer. Like we know some things do what they think, but let's just talk about what insulin. You know what makes things grow? Insulin. People don't want to talk about that very much. And you know what's controlling your insulin levels the most? What you put in your mouth.
Mm-hmm. And your stress. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Completely.
Food. Sorry.
Food, exactly. Yes.
Sugar.
And like food first and foremost. And then what people may not appreciate is every time you're having that stress response. And this is why, and we could go down a tangent, but this is why everybody's going for the GLP-1s, because the GLP-1s help with the glucose control by way of cortisol and glucagon. Okay. So it's modulating insulin, how much is released, so that it's slowing down how much glucose is dumped from the liver every time we're stressed, physical, mental, emotional, chemical, environmental. The brain is like, oh, there's something I got to go respond to. So I need gas in the tank, which is glucose, so I can go respond to the thing. Remember that with everything that happens, we're going to recognize and respond. What do I need to go do the thing? I need glucose. Okay, then we sit and we stew. We don't actually take it because we're scrolling. We're getting stressed about something we see on our social media, and we're just sitting on our couch eating chips, and the body's like, we don't need all this glucose. So let's create insulin to go store the glucose. Right. So
the last thing you should be worried about is BPC-157.
Exactly. That's the point.
You should be worried about sitting watching Netflix, having your Doritos and your goldfish crackers. Okay. Yeah. So, but for those of you who just are like, I really don't know what she just said.
Yeah.
Listen, you know what? We've got courses that go over all of this in such incredible depth and ease. It'll blow your mind. You're like, what does she mean GLP-1? What was that? Oh my gosh. You know what? She has courses on GLP-1s. I have courses on GLP-1s. So any health coaches out there, clinicians, if you want to understand peptides actually from people who've studied peptide therapies, taken courses, have certifications, been trained by people like Kent Holtorf, Dan Stickler, and other real experts in the field.
Dr. Seeds, Dr. Pastrana, all the good ones.
You could talk to us. You could take courses with us. You could get in private VIP, clubs that have access to us, direct communication with us. We both offer them. Dr. Melissa kind of focuses much more on the health coach certifications and physicians and chiropractors. My courses do some of that too, but I don't offer the same certification. I'm a guest lecturer and in her institute. So you guys go to the description and look at what we both offer, see what you can do. Like my goal, I have focused on the consumer. I'm still seeing patients, I'm in private practice, to empower you. I don't want you
Yeah.
feeling confused, lost, and ever gaslit in a doctor's appointment again in your life. Period.
Yes.
You don't have to become an expert in anything. You don't know how to have to use everything super well. But boy, does it make a difference when you have some own inner knowing and own inner authority and the ability to say no when you want to say no, yes when you want to say yes. I want as much health sovereignty for you and your family as possible. So I offer those courses with access for kind of like the biohacker to know how to do it themselves, how to resource it themselves, take control themselves, and how to partner with your clinician of choice in the field and modality of choice to work with them to get what you need. So you
I
don't,
love that. And that's
passively.
yes, and that's exactly so. And here's what's so important is we are all at the beginning and end of the day, we are all both the client. So even for my clinicians out there, we are also the patient and the client, right? Because at some point we need to know how to be sovereign over our health, take accountability. We are the creators of our own expression of health and well-being. And the current model keeps us a victim versus a victor kind of thing, meaning like, hey, well, they told me to take a pill. It takes any ownership off, and there's no judgment on that. But in our programs over at HLI, Human Longevity Institute, we teach our doctors, our coaches, our clinicians how to create a client-centered experience, how to actually partner with you and to support you in supporting yourself, because no one can do it. Nobody's coming to save any of us, right? So listening to conversations like this, really stepping back and going, okay, well, wait, but there's hundreds of thousands of people that have used it. There are so many. You go online, and we're going to put a lot of links to incredible studies down here. This is, as Dr. Rimka has referred to it, BPC-157 is the gateway peptide. It is got the highest safety profile. Even Huberman did acknowledge that in his interview. It is so safe. It is so effective. It is so much good for the body. And so shouldn't we know the things that can help us and support us? And beyond molecules. Molecules are a piece, but they're never going to outperform and out support or out heal or out correct lifestyle, right? Lifestyle first. What does that mean? It is how we're thinking, how we're eating, how we're moving, how we're loving, how we're relating, how we're connecting, the choices that we're making in our everyday world. That moves the needle 75 to 90%. No peptide, no drug, no molecule does that actively. So know thyself, choose where and how you want to be supported. Know that there are resources out there. Rimka, we're going to put all the links below. So be sure to check out everything that she offers. Be sure to check out if you're more of a clinician and you want to really get some clinical training and know how to support your clients with these molecules and other processes, please check us out. You guys, we hope you got so much out of this today. Be sure to check all the links to learn more about our courses, how to continue to stay engaged in this conversation. We are going to continue to bring more and more and more conversations like this out, kind of pulling back the curtain, giving critical thinking, just not accepting one size fits all. But we are in a time and a space of truly personalized precision medicine, health, wellness, and we hope to empower you to go out and make your best choices that will support you to live better longer starting today. Thanks for being with us.